When I was younger, I used to host sleepover parties where we'd watch scary movies. For my 13th birthday, we did the same thing. We watched a few films that night, but the main one was The Exorcism of Emily Rose. At the time, my aunt was living with us. She kept making unsettling comments throughout the evening, saying things like, "Doing stuff like this is just asking for bad attention," though I can't recall all the details. Most of the night was uneventful until around 1 a.m. when we started the Exorcism movie. During one of the intense scenes, specifically when the girl leaves her dorm and looks outside, my dog, who was in a different room, suddenly started howling. He had never howled before or after that night. A little later, my aunt came upstairs and stayed with us without saying much. As we neared another tense part of the movie, the one with the barn and demons naming themselves, my aunt suddenly jumped up. The exact moment her feet hit the floor, the power went out in both the living room and my bedroom. It wasn't unusual for the power to go out in that house, but it usually didn't happen at night. We only knew my bedroom lost power too, because my alarm clock was blinking. My aunt flipped the breaker, and everything returned to normal. But we were too spooked to finish the movie and ended up watching SpongeBob instead until we fell asleep. The next day, two of my friends left unusually early. We had planned to go to the lake, but they were gone before we could even talk about it. My best friend stayed the whole weekend, and though nothing strange happened, the house felt heavy and oppressive all day. About 3 weeks later, I began having terrifying dreams, specifically about a tall woman in a simple dress. Her figure was shadowy, almost like a 3D silhouette. In the dreams, I'd be running through a forest or falling down a hill, and she would always be there, silently watching. I'd wake up covered in scratches, deep, self-inflicted ones. My mom and I tried everything, cutting my nails, taping gloves on my hands, and even having her sleep in my room, but nothing worked. The scratches eventually appeared on my neck, which led to school staff getting concerned, and even a visit from CPS. I was put into therapy, and this nightmare went on for 8 months. My brother had frequent bad dreams as well, but nothing as specific as mine. Then, out of nowhere, we moved. I went to bed one night as usual, and when I woke up, my mom had packed all of our things. After school, we went straight to my grandma's house and never returned to that home. We stayed with my grandma for a few weeks until my mom found a new place. The dreams stopped immediately, and the scratches healed within a few weeks. I haven't had any issues since, though I developed severe insomnia and anxiety that started around that time. Years later, my husband and I moved into an apartment a few blocks away from that old house. Within 3 weeks, I started scratching myself again, even though I wasn't dreaming about the woman. We were on a month-to-month lease, so we quickly moved out. When I recently talked to my mom about everything, she finally told me why we left so suddenly. The night we moved, she had been sitting in the living room after putting us to bed when she saw a tall, shadowy woman walk through the hall, stop at my brother's room, and then head into mine. My mom followed it, and as she reached my room, she heard a voice say, "You've already lost her." That's when she turned on all the lights and started packing. It's a bit of an anticlimactic ending, but I've been questioning whether it was all just anxiety, or if there was something real and supernatural about it. I've never experienced anything else like it, but I still can't shake the feeling that something was in that house. At the time of the sleepover, it was just me and my best friend, both around 7 or 8 years old. We're now 16 and 17, and neither of us has ever talked about this incident since it happened. We lived in Florida, about 15 minutes away from Tampa. It was one of our many sleepovers, and it started off just like all the others. We played with Barbies, watched movies, read books, and stayed up until we couldn't anymore, eventually going to bed around 9 or 10. I turned off the lights and climbed up to the top bunk, where we were both going to sleep. As soon as I laid down, something fell off. The house we lived in was old, and our landlord never bothered to fix anything unless it was rent time. Before getting into bed, I had turned on the fan and asked my mom to lower the AC. But as I settled in, I noticed the fan and AC were both off. I figured the power had gone out and didn't think much of it. About 20 minutes went by, and I still couldn't sleep. I felt like I was overheating. I wasn't sure if my friend was awake, so I quietly said her name. She immediately responded, "I can't sleep, but it's not because it's hot." I glanced over at her, barely making out her silhouette. I looked up at the ceiling and sighed. "What is it then?" I asked. She hesitated before whispering, "It's the man in the corner." A chill ran down my spine. I slowly turned my head to look at the corner, but I didn't see anything. Relief washed over me as I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I adjusted my blanket, but that's when I saw him, a tall, dark figure standing in the corner, staring right at us. I gripped my friend's hand and squeezed my eyes shut. "We need to get my mom," I whispered, and I felt her nod in agreement. But neither of us could move. Suddenly, I felt the bed shift, as if someone was climbing up the ladder. The blankets rustled as something slowly crawled toward us. I cracked my eyes open and saw the man moving closer. Gasping for air, I turned to see my friend frozen in terror, watching him too. He had no distinguishable features, just a dark outline. I whispered, "Scream when I tap your hand." She barely nodded. As the man reached for my face, I tapped her hand, and we both screamed as loud as we could. My mom burst into the room within seconds, flipping on the lights. We were clinging to each other, crying uncontrollably. There was no sign of the man. My mom checked all of the doors and windows, which were locked and untouched. We spent the rest of the night on the couch, watching Barbie movies and holding each other tightly. To this day, I don't know what or who we saw that night, but I'll never forget the bone-chilling feeling of death being so close to my face. When I was 12, I had a close bond with my cousin Cole. We were inseparable, often hanging out together both in and out of school. One Friday afternoon in late May, I was at Cole's house. We were excited about the weekend when my mom called, informing me that our grandpa was in the hospital. The situation wasn't life-threatening, but our parents decided to stay overnight with him and my grandma. I was told I could spend the night at Cole's with his older brother Hunter, who was 15, watching over us. Hunter was cool and not the bossy type, so we were all fine with the arrangement. We ordered pizza and spent the evening goofing off like most kids our age. Around 9 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Cole answered it, and there stood two older men claiming they were from the city, investigating reports of low water pressure in the neighborhood. They asked if Cole's parents were home. Following the advice we'd been given, Cole told them they were unavailable. The men then began asking more questions and requested to come inside to check the water pressure. At this point, Hunter intervened, politely telling them that everything was fine and they should move on to other homes. Reluctantly, the men left. We shrugged off the encounter and continued having fun until it was time for bed. Hunter and Cole shared a bedroom, and I decided to sleep there with them instead of on the couch so we could keep chatting. Hunter gave me a sleeping bag, and after some random talk, we all fell asleep. Early the next morning, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. Afterward, I heard noises coming from the family room, which was odd since both Cole and Hunter were still asleep. I panicked and woke them up. When we quietly checked the family room, we were horrified to find the same two men from the night before, rummaging through the house. One of them pulled out a knife and started moving toward us. We bolted for the front door, miraculously managed to unlock it, and fled outside. Fortunately, a police car was passing by. We flagged the officer down and told him what was happening. He called for backup, and within minutes, several officers arrived and arrested the intruders. The men had entered through a broken window in the laundry room and likely targeted the house because they figured 3 kids would be easier to handle than adults. While waiting outside for the police to clear the house, some neighbors, including classmates from our school, came out to see what was going on. Unfortunately, we realized we hadn't had a chance to get dressed, so we were standing there in just our briefs, embarrassed and exposed. This led to weeks of teasing at school, but at least we were safe. In the end, we learned the importance of being cautious, and we're grateful that the situation didn't end much worse.